This is just a modelled example of how you could answer one of these blog posts. I'm having a few emails to ask, what could you include in it? So we're going to go through it now. I'm using for this something called Jamboard. This is really good. I use this a lot when I'm teaching. It's an interactive whiteboard where you can share ideas. For the purpose of today, I'm just showing you my whiteboard, but the great thing with this is that you can, if you're using this as a teacher, anyone can write on this if you share it. I'm not going to share it today, but just to show you how you could use it if you're going to be teaching. Okay, so just coming back to the assessment page, then everything you need for the blog assessment is on the assessment page. You can see here there's your pro forma. There's some exemplar blogs there, so have a look at them. They're examples from last year. So I'm going to be picking section B. I'm going to be picking one of these suggested blog posts. So as mentioned, you can follow your own interests. You don't have to use these. We do suggest that you do follow them because we know there is a lot of reading links to link to these. So you have to answer one from section A, one from section B, and then section C you reflect on your placement. So for this one I'm going to choose what can be done to improve attitudes to maths in Welsh primary schools. Okay, before we do anything, before I start to answer that, the first thing you should do is look at the marking criteria. If you're not looking at it's easy for me to say. If you're not looking at marking criteria in year one, then you need to start doing that, especially for year two. So you can see here, for section B, your ability to demonstrate an understanding of the key concepts related to numeracy, your ability to reflect critically, supporting ideas with academic sources. So we'll get into that now. That's worth 20 marks. Also think about your quality of writing, your academic tone, 10 marks. Definitely think about your multimedia, which is worth 20 marks. So let's get into it. All right, so the question's asking, what can be done to improve attitudes to maths in Welsh primary classrooms? So to answer that, I'm going to answer it as if it was an essay. So although this is a blog and you can use multimedia, I would approach it still as a traditional essay. You can write in the first person if you want, because you'll be reflecting on your experience. You don't have to, but you can. Okay, so I'd always start with the structure. So start to think about, for all your blogs, you could have an introduction, then you'll have your main body, then you'll have the summary. In the introduction, say to the reader, the person that's been marking, what is going to come up in the main body. So you can say, in this blog post, I will be discussing, for example, attitudes to maths, blah, 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 whatever you're going to be doing. Also then, try to set some context of the scene. So you could talk about, as I do in the lecture, well, what's wrong with attitudes towards maths? You could maybe introduce some statistics. You could maybe use some of the statistics I've used in my lecture. You could go and find your own. Really important that you look to set the scene there. So this is really helpful for the reader. In the main body, which is the main few paragraphs, that's when you're really going to tackle what can be done to improve Welsh attitudes. In the intro, you might be saying what the problem with the attitudes are. And then the conclusion, now this is really, really important. In the conclusion, you just summarise what you've said. That might sound really obvious, but we see so often in the conclusion, people introduce new things. The conclusion is just to summarise what you've said. Don't introduce any new ideas in the conclusion. Okay, so you've done a bit of scene setting. You've talked about how potentially, there's a number of, you'd have to use research for this. Everything you say, and make sure you back up with evidence, as we say. But you might say that, a number of children are not engaged with maths. Traditional forms of teaching of maths, where you just have worksheets and working in silence. There's research to say that isn't effective, so you can look at the work of Joe Bowler. Then you could get into, what can be done to improve attitudes? Well, one of the first things you can do is, what have you seen on placements? Some of you are working in secondary, some of you are working in behaviour units, some of you are working even in nursery, and they are still obviously working with numeracy. So think about what can be done to improve attitudes. One of the areas where math attitudes have been changed is this break from just sitting down in quiet maths classrooms and teachers using technology, or they're using the outdoors, or they're actually using a cross-curricular approach to try and teach maths or numeracy. So that could be something you want to talk about. And you could bring multimedia in there because maybe you've got some examples you found online. YouTube is a great resource for that. Maybe you've gone on and you've seen some examples from some primary schools. Primary schools on Twitter, if you've seen anything on Twitter, I'm encouraging you in this module to get onto Twitter yourself. So you could copy and paste or snip in tool, take the tweet, put it within your blog. That'd be a really good example of the use of multimedia to demonstrate what you've seen and back up what you're saying. You could talk about, as I talk about in the Maths is Boring the Maths is Boring lecture, about trying to make maths more engaging with bringing authentic learning. So you could bring in things like Usain Bolt and talk about, rather than just learning about Usain Bolt or times, you could try and bring in some authentic learning, things that are going to be relatable to real life with children, rather than, again, just practicing through endless worksheets that, as Joe Bowler says, once you've got an answer right for a few questions, you're actually not going to make much cognitive gain from that. Also, really important, what we want to see is the curriculum documents. So look to see what are the expectations. So look at the numeracy framework. Definitely look at the numeracy framework. Look to see what are the expectations, what do Welsh Government expect. Go on to the maths and numeracy part of the new curriculum. If you just Google the curriculum for Wales, in there you'll see numeracy and maths. You'll see things like the numeracy pages and the what matters pages. Try and bring those in. Copy and paste quotes from there to include. We want to see curriculum documentation within your blogs. So whether it's the digital competency frameworks or the numeracy frameworks, or as those what matters statements, that's all really, really important. Again, talk about the theory we've introduced in theories and seminars. So go back over. We've spent a lot of time preparing these lectures, going to do a lot of reading for you. That doesn't mean you don't do any reading. Look at the reading tasks we've set you for the week. Again, that'll start you off to look at the reading list from those readings, and then you can start to do wider reading. The wider reading you can demonstrate, obviously, the more exposure to marks that you will get. Start to look for studies that show an impact or an improvement to engagement with maths. So for example, Jo Bowler's done a number of these studies. She's conducted studies within primary schools, predominantly in the US, but she has done some studies in the UK that show that if you bring these authentic learning experiences to learners, then it can improve their engagement with maths. So look to support what you're saying with academic sources. So you're going to need to go onto MetSearch. You're going to need to go and search for these. If you are stuck finding things, go and speak to our academic librarians. They are there, ready to help you. You could just send them an email. It works better if you know exactly what you're looking for. You can send them an email and they can help you to find things. But again, look at the reading list. The first place to start would be the reading list, the seminars, the lectures. There's so much stuff that is there. So again, you're going to get more marks for multimedia. So be creative. We're making things in university. For the maths attitudes, we're actually, that week, you guys are going to be taking part in some fun, hands-on ways to make maths fun. So video yourself when you're doing that. Take some pictures when we're in the session. Also, you might want to try them at home. You might want to try them with any siblings. You might want to try them when you're out on placement. Be creative with this. Use apps, use TikTok, use clips, use Snapchat, whatever you want to use. It could be just a video to show you having a go at this. And again, you're going to get more marks for this. It could be that you do a very, very short introduction. You do a video version of it. Be as creative as you want. You could go onto Adobe and you could create a little poster to say that section C, maybe you make a little diagram or something. Again, the more multimedia that you make, the more exposure to marks that you'll get. Okay, so we want to see all of these aspects within your blog. We want to see you making links with the curriculum documentation, what you're seeing on placement, with the theory, with curriculum expectations, and what you've actually done in university sessions. That, hopefully, if you can do all that, encapsulates what we're trying to get you to do for your blog. If you've got any questions, we can go through this in the blog surgery, but hopefully this gives you a bit of an overview of what to include within your blog. Good luck. Speak to you in sessions.